All right, everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Monday, May 1st, and welcome to our second pre-conference education session. I am Chris Poole, your spring conference chair for 2023, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our Monday night education session. I'm so thankful for Darryle to agreeing to my arm twisting to attend and present this evening. I do owe him a big old hug in person once I see him again in person. Yes. So yes, Darryle and I, we shared lots of hugs in Colorado, and we just have lots of fun when we get together. But I know you're not here to hear me share my experiences with Darryle. You are here to listen to Darryle yourself, get some different tips, get some different ideas for yourself. In Darryle's speech tonight, he has a couple key takeaways for you. He is going to share 5 steps to rejuvenating your speech preparation. He is going to share with you how you can make the most out of your feedback to give past speeches a new freshness. And recycling speeches, that's something that I frequently do. And then his last key takeaway is rediscovering your drive as experienced speakers in the post-academic or in the post-pandemic world. Darryle, he had shared with me that he thought tonight's session was going to be a very relevant presentation. So many of us have been adversely affected from the pandemic and may have lost their fire just a little bit, including himself, but he was able to get back on track. Let's put a nice warm welcome here together in our virtual session with Darryle Brown and the BROWN method of speech preparation for experienced speakers.
Right. Thank you so much, everyone. What I want to do tonight in conversing and spending time with you is that I would like for this to be interactive. I don't want to limit it to just pure lecture. So I may call on some of you experienced speakers and just pretend it's a table topic. So keep it concise on the answers, and we will rock through this and we will all learn something together, because all of us here have something to offer. We have insight, experience, and perspective that I believe that all of us can benefit from. It is certainly my pleasure to be here with all of you to share what I have experienced as far as my own personal story, in addition to what we all can do together to be at the place where we want to be in a state of preparation. So when it's showtime, we're ready to drive the ball forward. So let's get going with our presentation, and I will start with one definition, and that is preparation. Preparation is defined as the action or process of making something ready for use or service, or of getting ready for some occasion or duty. And when I think about that, I think about us as speakers, especially those of us who have been speaking for quite some time. And sometimes we take that experience for granted, and maybe perhaps as a result of that, that time of experience that we've had where we've given maybe even hundreds of speeches, especially those of you who have this multiple distinguished Toastmaster designations, or perhaps you've been paid to speak at several occasions or so. It's a possibility, and it's easy to take that experience for granted and maybe not prepare as much as we used to when we first started out as a Toastmaster. We put some processes in place when we started, even as perhaps an experienced speaker before we joined Toastmasters, and we have this process, and over time, it's to be able to, kind of figure, I got the basics down. I don't need to prepare as much anymore because I have experience under my belt. I've gotten paid for crying out loud for speaking. Then over time, something happened to all of us that changed our lives forever. That was the pandemic. That means that everything that we enjoyed about speaking ended up changing as well. I know for some of you maybe have experienced similar to myself, we missed the presence of the stage. We missed the engagement that we felt when we experienced the audience responding to what we had to share, whether it's a personal story or whether it's a specific subject matter, or maybe we've done something entirely unique like a monologue play. And I've had the experience of doing a monologue play at one of my clubs called Prince Charming's Regret. And it was an amazing play. But you know what? I prepared for weeks for that one speech. I even got a costume ready. And I worked with several people to get that speech to a place of precision that, had I not done so, I would have been totally scared to death. And I think about the time and energy I put into preparation for that one speech. And I can't recall a time since then that I put so much into preparing for a speech. But I realized something about that now, back then, that I needed to be in a state of preparation all the time and putting the same commitment in every speech because of the audiences. Because the audience deserves the level of preparation that I put into it. What about you? Some of you, I'm sure you have some great stories of how much you prepared for a fantastic speech, maybe a keynote speech, maybe a specific speech or personal story in your clubs or in another setting, or maybe at a conference. And what's that sustain? Did you sustain that state of preparation? So the question to ask all of you is, when have you had that experience where you felt unprepared to speak? Have you ever felt unprepared to speak? I can think of countless stories where it was at work when there was a presenter that we were excited about coming to join us and share some knowledge and information about a particular subject matter that everyone was eager to hear and was curious about. And unfortunately, something happened where they couldn't make it. But they knew I was an experienced Toastmaster. So guess what happened? They called on me to give that presentation. I was not prepared to give that presentation, folks. I was in that situation. How many of you have been in a situation like that where last minute, we need you. We know that you can speak. Can you do this session for us? I don't know about some of you, but when that feeling of preparation is something that I think in my mind, if I was always in a state of preparation during that time, it would not have mattered if I was called upon to do that speech at the last minute. And I reflect upon that now that I've made a commitment to myself that anytime someone calls upon me to speak, that I'm always prepared and I'm always ready. The purpose of this presentation is to do one specific thing. Bring you from this place of nervousness, sweating, uncertain, maybe a little confused, confident, getting back to where you've been in the past. And many of you, I know, experienced speakers, you've been in a place of confidence and been in a place that you've been prepared for a specific speech or moment, and you were there and ready to go. Well, let's get us back to focusing on that. If you feel personally that you're not in the state of preparation you used to be for a variety of reasons, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Our goal ultimately for you in this presentation is to get you in a continual state of preparation, anytime, any place, any audience. I know for me personally, when I was in that mode, when it was showtime, and I call it the zone, when you know everything is falling into place and it's showtime and you're ready to go, I can always reflect back to how much time I put in to prepare for that particular speech, to when I'm able to really hit my mark and completely get into that stage of the zone where I know that no matter what happens, I'm going to nail this thing. And what about all of you? I hope that hopefully after this is something that you'll think about as we move forward. So what can Brown do for you to help you always be prepared? Now, mind you, I'm a little jealous, folks, because I believe that in my imagination, UPS stole that slogan from me. But yeah, don't tell them that I'm using it right now. It'll be our little secret. But I wish that I could have used that as my slogan because, hey, after all, my name's Darryle Brown, and Brown is here to do what I can to serve all of you. You know what the main thing is for us as experienced speakers in particular, and even maybe new speakers, everything starts with a new mindset. That means that how we were in the past, we have to think about perhaps a new way of thinking. We're now in a stage of technology where we're doing things hybrid now. And as much as people may or may not like virtual formats for communication, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. There may be opportunities that we're called upon to give virtual presentations, such as this one here, just as much as being called upon to speak in person. And when we ensure that we have a new mindset toward how we're going to approach, how we're going to communicate, how we're going to give speeches to various audiences. Many audiences here, we have a unique opportunity to speak to members of our audience who could easily be around the world, to be anywhere virtually, which I believe for us is a huge benefit. Not necessarily because I'm sure that many of us, especially if we're speaking to people perhaps in a tropical setting, like I would love to be when I'm giving a speech anywhere, that maybe perhaps virtual is not the most ideal, but why not make the most of it as though you are there present? Your preparation, your mindset, and how you focus, particularly on how you're going to approach this manner of communication, will make the difference to your audience and to yourself, because you have expanded yourself in a manner in which no matter what setting, you're always prepared to deliver your best work to engage your audience and make a difference in their lives, no matter where they're at. When I changed my mindset to a new mindset in particular toward how I deliver speeches, which formats that I use, no matter how sentimental I was about in person, I had to think about that every venue that I speak at is important. The audiences are important, and how I prepare is just as much important for me to connect with that audience and make that difference in their lives. So when I changed my new mindset, I realized that everything I needed to get back to a state of preparation was with me the entire time. The rest of you, if you feel like that you have not prepared for your speeches the way in which you used to in the past, everything you have is with you right now. It's been there the entire time. You want to get back on track to how you used to prepare yourself. It's already there, but you have to make that change with the mindset, and then also prepare differently than the way in which you used to in order for you to produce your best work ever, and regardless of formats, anywhere, any place, any audience. So that is where the BROWN method of speech preparation for experienced speakers comes into play. This is what helped me as an experienced speaker to really reshape my mindset and reshape my focus on what it means to always be in a state of preparation, regardless of how much experience I have. So I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you, and you will remember these. These are easy to remember. So that's what's going to make a difference in this presentation for you this evening. B stands for build. Build what, you ask, Brother Brown? Build blocks? Build a sidewalk? Build what? I'm sure many of you are asking that question right now. Build on your speech portfolio. Here's something that I believe that so many of us take for granted. How many of you have, if you could give a show of hands, how many of you have given more than 5 speeches? Look at that. I'm seeing hands here. Everyone has given more than 5 speeches. All right. There's some that might not have raised their hand, but that is okay. If you've given more than 1 speech, do you know that you already have a speech portfolio? Yes, Christopher. Did you have your hand up? All right. So I'm going to, of course, engage the audience here because I want to ask you the question. Ed, why would building a speech portfolio be important for an experienced speaker?
Usually when people are asking you to speak, they aren't specifically asking for one idea or one topic, and therefore it's good to have a range of ideas that you can present to others.
Excellent. A range of ideas. That's an important part of preparation, wouldn't it be? If you have a speech portfolio, you have an opportunity to be prepared regardless of what kind of venue, what kind of subject matter, especially if you've already given those speeches previously. You know, the thing is that many of us here may have been sitting on a gold mine. Some of your past speeches are wealth waiting to happen. How many of you have given a speech once and have never given that speech again? Raise your hand. I know you're out there. I'm guilty of it. I got a ton of speeches I've given that I wish I could still remember them. I wish I wrote them down. I wish I still had them at my disposal to use again and again. Why is that valuable when it comes to building a speech portfolio? First and foremost, don't we get feedback in our clubs? We get feedback on our speeches. We get our strengths are identified. We get areas of growth opportunities or feedback, and we also get praise to keep speaking. Here's what I think that so many of us fall short on when it comes to not building a portfolio. And that is that we think, maybe in the back of our minds, maybe this is what I used to think also, is that when you give a speech, each time you're called upon to give another speech, let's say for Pathways or the old Competent Communicator Manual, we assume that we have to do a brand new speech each time. How many of us thought that way? Raise your hand, raise your hand. I did too, but I realized something, that why am I doing different speeches all the time and not using that speech again at some point? And some of you, I know some of you are members of multiple clubs, and you still felt like, maybe perhaps you still felt, maybe like me, that you had to give a brand new speech at each of those clubs and not the same speech again. And maybe it received greater feedback to polish it up and make it better again. Or I want to encourage all of you, if you're doing that, stop it. Stop it. Give that speech again. Use the feedback. You get all of those slips from your audience. You get it from your evaluator. Go back over those. Get that speech. Work on it. Polish those areas. Get back out there and give that speech again. And then when you get feedback the second time, give it again. And then give it again. And make sure that that speech becomes polished. It gets perfected. And it doesn't matter if it's your personal story. Give that personal story again. It sounds better every time. Why? Because you're using feedback to improve upon it and make it better. And once you begin to start polishing that particular speech, you put that in your folder and it becomes part of your portfolio. Next, get another speech out. Do the same thing again. Get the feedback, use it, give the speech again and again and again. Keep giving that speech until it's a fine, well-shined speech that you can give anywhere and connect with any audience. Put that one in the folder and then do it again. Next speech, and again and again. There are no rules in there. I would guarantee you, Pathways in the old manual, all of that, none of them say you can't give the same speech again. In fact, they imply that you should give it again because you get feedback on those speeches for the purpose of you being able to improve upon that speech and give it multiple times. In turn, it improves all of your other communication skills. And it's wealth waiting to happen because there's an audience out there who will pay you to give that speech, the one that you only gave once. It's true. It happened to me. I let that wealth go to the side because I did not give that one speech that when I don't know, accidentally gave it again or something like that. Man, I got so many compliments over that one speech and it really touched someone's life. You have one of those speeches also. It's there. You haven't given it again and you need to give it again. And it's waiting for that, right? That audience is waiting for you to give that speech again. So I encourage all of you, build upon your speech portfolio. Don't hesitate to use the feedback that you receive from your evaluators, because that's part of the gold. That's cash money. Each time someone gives you an evaluation, you're an experienced speaker. You've been doing this for a while, but perhaps you've been taking for granted the what you have in your arsenal, what you have to offer. And so this is an opportunity for you to really start to build upon that portfolio and really make a difference, not only in the lives of your audience, but also in yourself. And imagine this, you have a speech portfolio there now. You're always in a state of preparation. You're ready to go, no matter what the moment is. If someone calls you at work and say, hey, our presenter couldn't make it, can you give the presentation instead? Well, you already have your speech portfolio. You can go right in there right now and say, I'm ready to go. Let's do it. B stands for build your speech portfolio. R stands for research. Research what? Do I really need to do research for my speeches per se, if it's my personal story? Well, maybe, maybe not. But imagine this. If you research to add credibility, it reinforces anything you say, particularly about any subject matter. Researching is very important to your audience too, because we're in a world of fact checking now, because there's so much misinformation out there that it's absolutely critical that when you do the research, that the research comes from credible sources, people or entities that are objective, that give actual facts, that are not slanted with propaganda, misinformation, or anything else of that nature. And it's just like Joe Friday said, just the facts, man. Researching is very important, because for you, if you're going to quote anything, if you're going to give statistics or data or anything pertaining to that research, it's absolutely vital that you make sure that you don't put yourself in a bad position where someone has to fact check you. If someone fact checks you, they know that the source that you're receiving that information from is credible. That adds credibility to you and everything you say. And your audience absolutely will respect you. And if it's a subject matter that's near and dear to your heart, for example, I love talking about voting. And when it comes to facts, history, things of that nature, I always make sure I do my homework so that it reinforces the point of what I'm trying to say, and that everyone knows I'm coming from credible sources, because also my integrity as a speaker is really important. For you, the best way for you to prepare for any subject matter that you need to speak on, it really rests in how well your research is. So be sure that you research to ensure it adds credibility, and believe me, you will hit a home run no matter what audience you're dealing with. Even if it's an audience of engineers, if you're talking about something about engineering, you darn well better show that you've done your research, you've done your homework, because I tell you, those who are analytical are always thinking about, yes, that's true. I know that's, and you want the audience to be nodding their head and saying, hey, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. This lady knows what she's talking about. And you'll have the audience eating out your hands, but it's all about the preparation when it comes to your research. Well, Susan, I want to talk to Susan right quick. Susan Bruschafer?
Bruschafer.
Yes, Susan Bruschafer. When it comes to research, why is that important to you?
Building on what you said about credibility, Darryle, I think it is something that is absolutely necessary, but you have to know who your audience is. If you throw a lot of facts at somebody who is just there to enjoy your speech, and you're telling maybe a life story, you probably don't want to throw a lot of facts and figures at them. If you have somebody or an audience that is not a numbers kind of person, then you're going to lose them. So you have to kind of know who it is that you're going to be talking to before you give your speech, and then research or not accordingly.
Oh, that is excellent. That is an outstanding point, because believe me, your audience, knowing your audience is really essential, and giving, sometimes you have to give it in bite-sized pieces when it's a lot. It depends on the content. I absolutely agree with that. I think that that's really important on how much you deliver and what specific audience. Thank you so much, Susan. That is a wonderful point. O stands for observe. What exactly are we observing, Brother Brown? Well, there's a number of things we should be observing in the time when it's showtime, prior to our time to speak. All of that is important to preparation before, during, and even after the speech. And I would say observe the audience response. Larry, why is observing the audience response important to you?
It's with their listening, and if they are having some kind of facial expression. What I try to do is have eye contact with the audience to encourage them, either live or on Zoom or whatever we're using, to really have eye contact, bringing them into looking back at me. And that way you have a non-verbal communication and connection with that one person. So I like to look at people, glance, not really stare. But then when I'm on Zoom, then it's the idea of looking straight into the camera and building that rapport. And that way it's kind of that unspoken connection that invites them to pay attention to what you are trying to convey to them.
Oh, that is excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for that, because I have no doubt in my mind that's one of the best ways to prepare. And when it comes to showtime, when you're giving a speech. Laurie, what should we be observing before we give our speech, before it's showtime?
Well, thanks, Darryle. So before you're giving your speech, you want to scan the audience. And it's always nice if you're doing a presentation is go up and talk to some people, especially if it's a room that you don't know anybody. Talk to some people, and so you do build a little rapport before you go on. But again, before you go on, scan the audience. And we always say know your audience. So hopefully if you're giving a speech about this certain topic, I hope they're going to be excited to hear that. It's going to be of interest to them. So that's the key. Make sure your topic is going to be something that they can relate to.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Jim, after you've given your speech, is observing the audience response important? And if so, why?
Thank you, Darryle. Excuse me, Brother Brown. From my perspective, engagement is a very continuous function. We've already covered what you do as you're presenting, what you do before. And if you want to stay engaged with that audience and recognize whether or not you've actually had some impact with them, observe their response. There'll be some levels of engagement, but then you'll see either satisfaction or puzzlement afterwards, and you can take that back and internalize it as you see fit.
Now, is feedback from an audience important after the speech has been delivered?
Well, it sure is if that speech is going to be part of your portfolio and something you want to work on next time.
Yes, indeed. So we covered observing audience response is important before, during, and after. And each one of our audience members here have given a great points with regards to that. What is really beneficial for us as a speaker when we're preparing, we are observing everything from body language, we are observing interest as far as facial expressions, or number of other things that may be happening with regards to that audience. And you're delivering a speech. Speech maybe perhaps went really well. The audience response, they fully embraced it, and they went forth and they enjoyed it, and you saw it in the body language. The feedback went great. But what if you delivered a speech and it totally bombed? And you may have taken some steps to observe the audience or so, and maybe perhaps you didn't quite know your audience when you delivered that speech. Is observing audience response important in that case, Chris?
Definitely, because that gives you some of that feedback of how you can make changes for in the future. And is there some way to still salvage what you have shared with them right then and do a quick little recovery if possible?
Oh, absolutely. And is it also possible that maybe perhaps you give that speech again, you can make significant improvements based on how well or not so well that particular speech went?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So it's definitely a learning experience. Observation of your audience. Your audience is the most important piece of how well you communicate and deliver your speeches. And anyone who fails to prepare by observing the audience responses will almost guarantee preventable mistakes, a lack of focus, and then maybe even be discouraged from wanting to give speeches again, which for us as experienced speakers is disastrous. Us not speaking, that's nuts. But does it happen? Absolutely. I've seen Toastmasters, seasoned Toastmaster members quit Toastmasters and quit public speaking because maybe perhaps they had one bad incident that they just could not get through. Or maybe it was a lack of preparation, a number of other things. But had they learned from the experience, picked the pieces up and moved forward and refined that speech, made it better, and got back out there again, perhaps they would have had an opportunity to see a different outcome. So that's why O for observe is really critical for us as experienced speakers. So it makes a difference because if you're giving a speech and you have the audience engaged where they're raising hands and asking questions, you know you've got that audience. And that's really key, because if they're not asking any questions, or they're looking bored and looking disinterested, maybe perhaps your delivery came across boring to some, that's the opportunity for you to learn from that. And how can I get some energy to this particular speech? How can I change the content? How can I focus where my audience is so interested that they're all asking questions and raising their hands, and they're so interested in what I have to say? That can be done with the very same speech about it the last time you've given that speech. Any speech can be refined. It's just a matter of how we prepare to make our speeches better. And then once we improve upon that speech, it's ready to go in the speech portfolio. Work. I have no doubt in my mind that anything worth doing well requires work. Susan, is it Tatar? T-A-T-A-R? I can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry, forgive me.
Hi.
Work the stage. What are your thoughts about working the stage when you deliver speeches?
Well, there's a big space out there, and it's always important to use, I think, all of it. You get your body movements, you get your hand gestures, you get a chance to let the audience see a lot more of you than if you're just standing behind a lectern and a podium. So I like to work the room, and it's a little bit more difficult on Zoom, but certainly it can be done as well.
Oh, absolutely. When you receive feedback on working the stage, what's the best feedback you've received when it came to body language, particularly the use of hands?
Well, I think when somebody says, well, your gestures actually match what you wanted to say. Sometimes people are just waving hands all over the place and they don't really mean anything. But when someone says to me, I like the way you match your gestures to what you wanted to try to convey to the rest of us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Susan. Right, let's see here. I would love to hear from Jan. Is it Jan Flatif?
Yes.
How is working the stage important in your preparation for giving a speech?
Well, it's boring if you just stand in one spot. I think you would help engage interaction with the audience as you move around and make eye contact from different points of the room, and you can use it to emphasize things in your speech. If you have two different characters or two different points of view, you can stand in two different spots, use tricks like that to help identify the different parts of your speech. If you may have a progression of things, you can maybe use it as steps going up of the room, just to visually show that the different parts of your speech.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jan. Great, fantastic points. Robin, love to hear from you. Suppose you are providing feedback to maybe a brand new or an intermediate speaker, one that has a little bit of experience. What is the best advice you would give for them to work the stage more when they're hanging on to the lectern for dear life? Are you with us? Feel free to unmute.
There, I think I got it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks. For anyone really, but especially a new person, we like to do a sandwich method, meaning something good, something maybe that they need to work on, and perhaps even something to very much so challenge them. In the way of the stage, maybe like you said, just suggesting that they don't form bad habits that they need to break later, such as suggested standing behind the podium, you watching TED Talks where they do waltz type of a dance where they break the stage into sections, and that can help you memorize your speech as well if you use part of the stage as a memory trigger. So just kind of helping each other one bit at a time to become better speakers, and using the stage is certainly a big benefit. I think for some of us, it helps us pace out our speed of language. So a lot of times slowing us, physical room for applause. Boy, there's all sorts of things that we can use, but I think the important thing is maybe just a few little bits at a time. Once we have that down pat, move on to a couple more things. We can't get ourselves too overwhelmed trying to learn too much too fast.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Nadia, when it comes to working the stage, how has that benefited you in your development as a speaker from when you first started until now?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm still not good at working a stage. I know that it has a great benefit because you can move from side to side. You can take people to points in your story, and it definitely helps you make sure that you're making eye contact with different areas of the room. Some people have a side. And so if you're moving, it helps you to make eye contact with others and engage them and help you connect. I'm just one of those people that I'm better in my little box on Zoom. And now I have to relearn how to go back in front of people and actually work a physical stage. But I do see the benefits of it.
That's excellent. That's an excellent point, because if we're able to figure out, and that's the one thing for me personally, I don't know about any of you other seasoned veterans here, but to be able to work Zoom, that is my struggle, because I don't engage the full benefits of it. With eye contact, that was a learned behavior to focus on the camera itself, and to substitute for eye contact, I usually do on stage. And so it's knowing the type of stage you're working as well is just as important. Virtually, it's different from how we do in person, of course. But in our preparation, we should be thinking about what format that we're using when we are about to deliver a speech. If we're doing virtually, we need to think about how are we going to work the box and be able to still exercise our body language appropriately, make use of the camera to ensure that we're maintaining proper eye contact, and still being able, if we need to raise up the laptop or camera or whatever and stand, to be able to still deliver in a manner in which we would do when we are in person. We still have to remember that there are limitations on how we work the stage virtually. And sometimes I'm sure for some of us, it's a struggle to transition between the two. Some have given up doing it virtually because they can't do what they do on stage. And that's probably not the ideal way to prepare yourself, especially when you're called upon to do a virtual type of presentation. You want to take advantage and prepare yourself now so that you're ready to go when it's showtime and you can work any stage, virtually or in person. Thank you, everyone. Those were fantastic points. So lastly, we're going to talk about, well, I was going to skip that picture because I think we all made some great points here, but this is an example of a gentleman working the stage, using slides really well, and also he's using effective body language. So if it's a situation where you're in person, work all of that stage, engage every audience member and look at them. And if you happen to know a few people and want to go and mention their name, that's even better, because it becomes that much more personal. Most of you know this stuff, but still it's great to be reminded of it anyway, because I had to remind myself of some of the basics as well. So N stands for note. And what note means note your progress. I think that many of us, maybe, I can only speak for myself, I had fell off from noting my progress, from how far I've come and the progression I made, and keeping me in a state of continual progression. Because if I don't note where I've come and monitor my progress, I slow down. Have any of you slowed down in as far as your progress is concerned? And just because you are an experienced speaker doesn't mean that you can't continually grow. And from personal experience, and many of us may also know this as well, if you're not continually using those skills and maintaining them, you start to lose them. You start to fall off from your previous progress. And with the pandemic happening as it did, some of us might have fell off on our progress. We might have slowed down. We don't give as many speeches as we used to. Some of us, we probably average on a monthly basis, maybe as many as 5 or 6 speeches. Now, maybe every other month, we might give 1 or 2. But perhaps if we noted our progress, we know that if we're falling off anywhere, then that is the warning sign to get us back on track. and to note our progress. If we're falling off, just as the lines there go up and down, we're going down, we work our way to get back up into perspective. Kathy Shine, do you note your progress as a speaker? And go ahead and unmute. Oh, maybe she's not there. Jason, do you note your progress? Do you still do it even as an experienced speaker?
Yeah, I think, what you're saying, Darryle, is really important, because not only is it important to remember where you are, but where you've come from, so you can keep building off of the successes and the challenges that you've had. So if you think about the high and the low points and trying to continue to move forward, because otherwise it's too easy sometimes also to just speak rather than speak to improve. Or you start speaking for free. As a district leader, that's the terrible habit I fall into, is I speak for free all of the time and don't get evaluated. And then I'm not progressing, I'm just speaking. And that idea of building off of where you are and continuing to find that success, absolutely, I think is very important.
Yes, well said. Liz Pollock, I believe. Yes, Liz.
I'm here.
If someone
Turn
does
my
not
light on
know,
here.
oh, sorry.
There we go.
If someone doesn't note their progress, how could that hurt them as an experienced speaker?
I think sometimes you need to know that you have momentum even when you don't feel like you do. So keeping track sometimes on the days where you're not feeling on top of your game might help to encourage you.
Oh, absolutely. It's really important for us to continually note our progress, because that's a vital part of our preparation as well. It helps us hold ourselves accountable to ensure that no matter if we get 3, 4, 5 DTMs, it really doesn't matter as much if we're not continually progressing, if we're not continually keeping our skills sharp, if we're not continually being consistent in our drive to communicate and connect to our audiences. And each time we're not speaking or we're speaking less, we need to notate that, hey, I've kind of fell off a little bit as far as my overall progress. So I need to get refocused, maybe perhaps join another club or whatever. And even if a person is a professional speaker, they can still fall off if they're not noting their progress. So what's important for all of us to remember is that we're always taking notes, seeing where we're at, giving ourselves a pulse on our commitment to our growth as speakers and leaders. And when we're doing that, we ensure that we maintain our focus, and we're always in a state of preparation as a result. So let's recap. We've talked about 5 key points today that I would love to go back over again, that we can think about so that we can put ourselves in a state of preparation or back into a state of preparation, or whatever applies to you. First and foremost is to build on your speech portfolio. One of the best resources for you to build on your speech portfolio are speeches that you've given in the past, the ones that you've given a 1-shot on, that you need to give a 2-shot, 3-shot, and multiple times to get evaluated and ensure that you further develop that speech and keep giving it again, because there are audience out there that will never get tired of hearing that great speech, especially after you've polished it, developed it, and made sure that it was ready to go no matter what situation you may be called upon to give a speech to connect to an audience. Oops. Next is let me get back, sorry. Research to add credibility. And we've talked specifically about how important it is to ensure that in a world of misinformation and the importance of credible sources and fact checking, the world of fact checking, to ensure that when we research, that our sources is one that if someone fact check, they know that you know what you're talking about and that you're credible and that you are focused upon ensuring that your audience gets the right information, the correct information, and it doesn't come across as deceptive. Next, observe audience response. We talked about before, during, and after speech, how important it is for us to observe audience response. Because once we understand how important that is, and we mold and craft that speech to make it even better because of that audience response, it will make a difference with the next audience, and you'll be prepared. W is for work the stage. It's important for us to continue to work the stage, learn to make the most of both environments, not just in person, but also working the virtual stage as well, and knowing what the limitations are, but making the most to overcome those limitations to become sharp and be able to deliver your best work regardless of the venue. And note your progress. And I can't tell you how many times it's been so important for you to track your progress, to ensure you hold yourself accountable, that you ensure that you also are continually moving the ball forward and you're not missing opportunities for you to be in that state of preparation. So therefore, always be prepared. And if you're prepared, you'll always be ready when it's showtime. Thank you for this opportunity to spend time with all of you. And I wish you the very best as you get out there and continually be in a state of preparation. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Darryle. Oh, I loved it. I took quite a few notes. I captured screenshots too. Oh, I would like to share real quick with everyone. Certificate of Appreciation to Darryle Brown in recognition of outstanding support and imparting valuable insights and knowledge. You are a key to our success. Thank you so much, Darryle.
Thank you.
One of the other things that I will be doing for you, which I had not shared with you, we are connected as a first connection on LinkedIn. I will be writing a recommendation for you on LinkedIn as well. And hopefully that will help build your credibility as a speaker, as a presenter, and a wonderful hugger. All right, I won't put the hugging part in there. I'll keep it professional. We only have a couple of minutes left in our time, but does somebody have they just have to ask one question real quick of Darryle. All right, I saw Liz's hand up first. Liz.
Thank you. So, Darryle, you mentioned people going through the DTM program multiple times. You also were encouraging people to monetize their speeches. At what point should a person work on the accredited speaker path and perhaps not go so hard toward 5 to 7 minute speeches in another DTM?
Well, I believe it really depends on each person as far as what their journey or their path is. I haven't pursued accredited speaker yet. I would say yet, because that may be something down the line, but at this time, it's not the direction that I'm going. I happen to have a couple of distinguished Toastmaster designations, and I'm well on track for a third one. But I think that with each person's journey, it's all about the preparation and what they desire to do to continually better themselves. Yes, absolutely going for accredited speaker. There may be opportunities to do more than just 5 to 7 minutes. It takes a great deal of skill for someone to be able to lock down some great speeches in 5 to 7. It does work, but when it comes to keynotes where you have additional time and you can make the most of, if you have the flexibility to be able to skillfully manage any time and still be able to deliver great speeches regardless of the time frame, I think that that's really the most important element. It's all about the preparation and how we focus on that. So if that's your journey, go for it. I think that it's a great program, and sometime in the near future, I might be amongst those who actually go for it. I think that's a great experience to have and a great designation as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. For everyone in attendance tonight, I did just put into the chat box an evaluation form. We would love if you would share your comments and feedback, and we will give that to Darryle. And again, use that information so he can polish and present again in the future. I always use the word recycle my speeches, but I like yours of building on the wealth and different ways, different perspectives, but it's always being able to make those improvements. And before everyone logs off, I was asked to share a little bit of information about an event coming up this Thursday evening. Are you looking for new members for your Toastmasters club? Are you having challenges recruiting new members? On Thursday, May 4th, yes, may the 4th be with you. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., District 35 is proud to welcome Toastmasters International Director, Region 5, Monica Rose, for an exciting hybrid session that will leave you inspired, energized, and with the tools and takeaways you need to build and inspire your club's membership. Monica has held a number of high-profile leadership positions in Toastmasters and worked with many club and district leaders. She's looking forward to sharing her insights with the members of District 35. You can attend this free event in person, and pizza and beverages will be served, or online, no pizza and beverages unless you provide them yourself. Either way, an RSVP is required. I will put the link for Eventbrite into the chat as well. And keep in mind, if you are attending the session in person, the event itself is free, but it is being held on the UWM campus, which means you may incur a parking fee. Parking availability on campus and parking rate information can be found on the UWM Transportation Services website, and I will also include that on the chat for you. I do welcome everyone to come to tomorrow evening's session. We are having our very own Cindy Latch, past district director and DTM and a past region advisor. She will be talking about strengths finders. Do the best that you can do with the best that you have. And then Wednesday night, you're welcome to come, and we have accredited speaker, Valda Ford. I was actually at her session where she won the certification to become an accredited speaker. And then Thursday, we have the membership session, or if you are planning on being a contestant or a functionary, we will have online briefings for that as well. And then Friday, hopefully we'll see you in person. Otherwise, I will see you online at our conference on Friday. And I am working on getting the details into the chat. Thank you, everyone, again. We'll keep the room open for about a half hour if anyone wants to stay and chit chat. We'll open up a couple of breakout rooms as well, make it a little bit easier to talk rather than just one person, and have some fun. Otherwise, if you log off, we will see you soon. Thank you so very much, Darryle, and everyone for attending.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.